You are now entering that one studio for the What Are You Made Of show with your host, Mike C-Roc, and his guest, who will be sharing what they're made of. The journey to success has been invisible until now. Sit back, relax, get your notepad ready, and enjoy the show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Calm it down, everybody. Calm it down. Thank you. We appreciate you all being here in the studio live, all million of you. And, we're back, fresh off a trip from Ole Miss, Oxford, Mississippi. I went down and saw the LSU game. Guys, let me tell you something. It was the most unbelievable experience. It didn't feel real the whole time. I watched one of the best games in college football, and I watch a lot of college football. The best games I've ever seen. They stormed the field. They were climbing on the goalposts. Unbelievable. And, we were actually, there with some investors, and we couldn't have had a better time for the investors. So everything worked out. Great trip. I'm back in the studio with another great guest. Nicole Jansen's in the building. Listen, and guys, when I bring guests on, we know this is about the ingredients that are going into making them who they are, but this is a powerful lady. Over the past 30 years, Nicole has empowered thousands of visionary entrepreneurs to play to their strengths, grow their business, and make a greater impact. As a coach and strategic advisor, she is passionate about helping leaders shift their perspective, expand their influence, and solve complex issues with the aim of transforming the world for the better. She's the founder of the Leaders of Transformation podcast, the top 1.5% podcast. We're just going to say top 1%. How about that? And because once you've been on this show, we're going to push you over that half. Reaching listeners in 140 countries. Nicole, welcome to the What Are You Made Of show.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here today. I'm really excited to have a great conversation with you and watching your show. It's just amazing what you're doing. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Right back at you. Well, look, this show starts the same way every time. I have to start it with a question because otherwise I go down rabbit holes, and I like to talk, as you know already from being in the green room. And that question is on the wall behind me, and it says, what are you made of, Nicole?
The first thing that comes to mind is tenacity. I had a mentor years ago who told me that. He's like, man, you just are so tenacious. You don't let go. So tenacity is what I'm made of.
Is that also another way to say you're stubborn?
It could be. I'm a Taurus. I'm a D personality. My dad was Dutch. My mother's German. I think there's a little bit of stubbornness in there.
Yeah, so I have a saying, stubborn's not a bad thing if it's on the right thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I love that. And I also say that quitting isn't a bad thing. It's what you quit that's the bad or good thing.
True. There's some things you got to quit. Mm-hmm. There's just some things you got to stop doing. Yeah. So.
Well, I see all these things out there with these, influencers and everybody on social media, and they have these things, and I like to go against the grain and not listen to them. And how can I do that when they're right? Well, I can say, well, maybe you're not saying it the right way. And quitting is a good thing when it's on a good thing. So, but anyway, welcome to the show here. I'm happy to have you. And I want to find out more ingredients that have gone into you by learning some, catalytic moments from your life, some stories from growing up, maybe some challenging things that you've had yourself in business and things you've overcome, because that's what the important thing is. It's, the successes are great, but looking back at all the things when you thought, how am I going to get through this? Where you had that feeling in your heart and your chest and your stomach, and you're like, oh, why am I going through this? All these things that happen to us, or as a kid when we go through traumatic experiences, they all make us, right? It's what we're made of. So can you take us back, how far, wherever you want to start? I don't really care, but I just want to hear some of these stories. I want to hear some great storytelling from you today.
Well, I've been blessed with having challenges in different areas of my life. And I say I'm blessed. There's many times where I've said, God, why can't I just read this in a book, learn it from a book? And he's like, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. And so I've had the opportunity to learn it in business, learn it in relationships, learn it in health. And so it goes back very early on. I started out I grew up in an entrepreneurial household, and I was successful at school, and everything just came easy and flowed and so forth. And then my dad had garage businesses, and he decided to very successful businesses and decided to sell them, invest in a different business, and down gold mines down in Brazil. I was about 11, 12 years old, and long story short, he came back a year later and had lost everything. And I watched them literally, all the challenges, the impact of that on our family, on the relationship, the marriage, and so forth, and it kind of set the tone, I should say, for me to understand what it really means to be successful. Because being successful isn't, like you were alluding to, it's not all the high points, it's the low points, it's what you do in those low points. And so for me, it started there. And then I started my own business. I actually helped my parents in their business when I was very young. I was 7 years old when they started a home-based business. And so I started helping them out in that business and continued to do that until later on I partnered with them. We built an 8-figure business by the time I was in my mid to late 20s, and also had my own business. And in that process, I thought, okay, so I'm going to do the right things and I'm going to be successful. Everything's going to go smoothly. I'm going to be tenacious. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to do those things. And what I found is I just kept, look at the wall behind you. I hit a brick wall. I just kept hitting a brick wall one after the other. And I'm like, why is this happening? And am I going to continue to repeat the pattern that my parents had experienced and fail, and have to keep getting back up again, and so it was a fight. And one of the things that was a defining moment for me was I was asking myself questions like, why me? Why is this not working for me? What's wrong with me? And I realized that the quality of my questions was determining the quality of my life. When I started changing the questions and started saying, what am I learning here? What is this? I can look at this and say, poor me, why is this happening to me? Or I can look at it and say, what can I learn from this? How am I showing up? How did I contribute to this outcome? And that became a kind of a focus for me. So when in my late 20s, when we had that business and it was very successful, and I thought that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And we had a business, it was vertical growth. Man, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I don't have to work, ever again. And it fell apart, completely imploded. It was like, what the heck? Then my health started to fail. My body is shutting down. I'm going, man, what do I do with all of this, right? It was asking myself quality questions that would help me move through those experiences to say, okay, what did I learn about this? What did I learn through this experience? I learned a lot on the way up in building that business. I learned even more on the way down. What did I learn? What can I extract, right? So I started to reflect. And I started to pull out all the blessings, all of the learnings that I could then go and apply to the next thing. With my health, it was like, okay, doctor said, you know what, can't tell you, there's nothing we can do. And I went, yep, that's a wrong answer. So let me go find somebody else who has another answer. I'm going to continue to ask these questions, and I'm going to keep digging until somebody gives me an answer on what we can do, because the vision that I have in my mind of what life is supposed to be like, or what I'm committed to, this does not match it. It doesn't match me dying by 35. I'm going to live to 100 years old. So we've got to bridge this gap here. I'm not going to be unsuccessful and broke the rest of my life. That doesn't fit the picture, right? And so what do I need to learn? How can I use this crap that I've been through and turn it into something good? And later on did it with, also with my marriage. That's a whole other story in itself. But yeah, I've had lots of opportunities to challenge that approach in many areas of my life.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about the marriage too, if you're cool with it, because I love talking about relationships and how that affects business. But let's talk about this also. So in the business, when you're hitting a brick wall, would you agree that really simply it comes down to just not knowing something?
Yes. I mean, it's always about I don't know what I don't know. I think a lot of people say, well, what do I need to learn? Sometimes we need to first unlearn something so that we can learn and have space for something new. So we think we know. I know when I was young, I was like, the biggest thing was, I know that. I got this. Mm-hmm. I remember saying to myself, like, I got this. And it was like, God said, let me tell you what you got. You got shit, right? Yeah. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes we have to humble ourselves. Oftentimes we got to be humble to say, I don't know. I got to I gotta ask those questions, and I gotta ask people who know, right? And sometimes, like, the mentors that were the best mentors for me were the ones that I didn't like them at the time, because they told me things that I didn't want to hear.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. 100%. So the other thing is, would you? I want to get into. And you said a great thing. Like the quality of your answers is dependent upon the quality of your questions. And you also, let's get into something else with this. Let's get into people and surroundings, environment, and suppressive people and suppressive factors in your life. Now, that could come from a relationship like spouse, but it also could come from the people in your company. It could come from your friends. It could come from associates. But let's get into that. How has that affected anything that you've been in with the people in your environment, one way or the other? Have you had to like really deal with that at times where you're like, wait a minute, this person is holding me back? And because I have a video I put out, and this is one of my speaker reels, and it says, every problem I've ever had is because I allowed the wrong people in my environment or allowed them to stay too long. And some of those times that person was me.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oftentimes we think about the people. I heard something recently, and I forget who said it. Just because people are good to you doesn't mean they're good for you. Mm-hmm. And so we have good people with well-intentioned people around us that they can help us to get they've helped us to get where we are. But in order to go to the next level, you got to let go of some people, right? You got to move on. And it's not to say there's something wrong with them. It's just, what are you creating? We have one life. You have one opportunity to make an impact, right? So who do you need along the way? There's friends for the road. There's friends for a lifetime, And so it's interesting, actually. I talk about that business falling apart. There was a lot of relationships, of course, in that business, and we had, business in 11 countries and very successful. And one of the reasons why, a big reason why that business failed, was because we were in business with somebody who did not share the same values with us. And so it became about them, right? Now, I actually learned a lot from this person and this couple, but in particular the woman. I actually learned a lot. I learned what not to do. I learned how not to lead. I learned how not to treat people in that situation. Now, I could have stayed in that situation and said, okay, like how can we figure this out and make this work? But at some point when it all fell apart, I was like, man, I'm out. I'm out. And actually my parents, I love my parents. They're both passed away now. Love them. They were loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
Because there was a point when I said to them, look, this is not going to go well. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. God's going to take care of us. It's going to be fine. I'm like, yeah, he's going to take care of us. And we got to do some things. And this is not going to go well. This person, it doesn't work. So sometimes you got to take the honest look at it and say, is this serving me? So there was a point where I looked at all of my relationships. I'm glad you're asking this question, because most people don't ask this question. I actually looked at all my relationships. I took a clean slate, very visual. So I was like, take this clean slate. And I was like, there's me and just me alone in the middle of that center. And I just looked at it and said, okay, it's me. Now I looked at then every relationship. I started with God. Okay, when I put him in the circle, does it help me or hinder me? Okay, it helps me. Great. So he gets to stay, right? So then I looked at my parents. And I love my parents. My parents were amazing. And they had a view of the world, and they had a view of what we should be doing and how I should be spending my life and all of that. And there was a point when they were struggling, right? They just lost everything. So they've got their own stuff going on. And I was like, I love them, and they need to be here. They need to be a little bit out of the circle for now. Maybe they come closer in, but and then some relationships could not live anywhere in that vicinity of me. And then there were some that were like, yeah, this is great. So what I ended up what I ended up doing is I ended up cleaning the slate of all my relationship. I went through every single relationship and determined where everybody fit and if they fit. And, I was like in my late 20s. So here I am. I'm sitting there and going, okay. So I just eliminate all my friends pretty much. I got nobody to call on a Saturday night to go do anything. But you know what? That's fine. Because I will replace those people, and they're going to be with the people that I want to hang out with. They're going to be with the people that are going to help me to, and it's not about being selfish, because I was also releasing them to go be who they were, doing what they're doing. I'm not trying to make them into something else. I'm not trying to force them to do things that they don't want to do. It's cool. You do your life, I do mine. We move on. And it was actually out of a place of love, that love for myself, and also love for and respect for them, to say, hey, I'm not going to try to fit a square, peg in a round hole. This is where my life is going. This is what I want to. This is what I'm committed to, and if you're on that journey with me, awesome. We're on that same journey together. If not, you want to go, cool. I wish you the best.
Yeah. So, when you look at it, if you're not moving as fast as you want to go, it's imperative to assess. Imperative. People, environment, your thoughts, your actions, the words you're speaking. Those areas right there, assessment leads to elevation.
Yeah.
And there's something always holding you back. There's something there. If you're not moving as fast as you want to go, or going as big as you want to go, there's something there. And I do a daily and weekly kind of thing. I'm looking, where do I need to, where do I need to change? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to make space? So when you're going out and coaching and consulting businesses, what are the main things and most common things you're seeing when you go out and you first started? And maybe it's things that they're not even realizing that are happening.
So I teach this results model. Results come from behaviors and actions. You got to do something to get a result. Well, what influences those behaviors and actions is our mindset. Now, you can say, change your mindset, have a positive mindset. Okay, great. I find a lot of people go, how do I do that? How do I do that? Okay, so positive thinking, I'm just going to do mantras, and I'm going to do that. Okay, great. Affirmations. I'm going to hang around positive people. All that's great. But really underneath when we break it down, mastery is breaking down, whatever you're trying to master into the parts. So you can master the parts, and then master the relationships between the parts, and then you master the whole. So when I really dug into that and said, how do you change your mindset? What influences your mindset, first of all, is your personality, it's human needs psychology, it's your strengths, it's your beliefs. And specifically we say, okay, beliefs. You got to change your beliefs. Change those limiting beliefs into empowering beliefs. Well, how do you do that? Right? So I looked at it and said, okay, there's really three areas. So there's beliefs that we have about ourselves, beliefs we have about others, and beliefs that we have about the world around us. Most often, and this is in business, is personal, most often when we are not achieving the results that we want, or we find ourselves in a situation where we're stuck, or, it's because there's somewhere down here, there is a limiting belief, because beliefs drive behavior, right? There's something showing up. I tolerated something. I stayed in that relationship longer than I should have. I didn't do the thing that I should have. I did this other thing, right? So it's looking at those beliefs and challenging those beliefs. And so what I see often is most times people want to work harder, and they want to do more. And they ask me questions like, what do I need to do more of to be able to get a better result? And actually, what I'll say to them is, what we need to start with is, what do you need to do less of, to your point about creating space, to be able to create the space and the capacity for you to be able to do the right things, because it's not just about doing more, it's about doing the right things. Like you said in the beginning, right? It's like, it's having tenacity in the right areas. It's not just running and so forth, because there's a lot of people that are that grind, right? Hustle and grind. Well, if you're hustling and grinding and you're in the wrong direction, you're just going to get there faster. Like, right. It's not going to work. So you got to be doing the right things in the right order. And so that's what I see, is that it's the beliefs, and most people don't want to deal with that. They're like, just give me the what do I need to do today thing, right? It's like, okay, well, this is what you need to do, is you need to challenge your beliefs. You need to challenge, what do you believe to be true about yourself? Who are you? At the end of the day, when it comes right down to it, who are you and what do you believe? Because that is going to determine your behaviors and ultimately determine your results. And your results will never exceed your self-concept, your life concept, your container. If you want to increase the results, you have to increase the container, right? It's like the roots determine the fruits.
Yep, 100%. So when you guys failed and lost everything, your parents lost everything, or that business fell apart, right?
Yeah.
That when that happened, how long did it take you to recover from that, and what was the next thing that happened after that?
So it started to implode, and then so it took some time, right?
Yep,
It just didn't
yep.
happen overnight. So there was that. For me, my parents wanted to rebuild. They wanted to hold on to it.
What kind
And
of
I'm
business
like,
was it, by the way?
we were in direct sales.
Okay.
So yeah, so we had a large team of people and all that. So, and like I said, my dad had garage businesses, franchises as well. So, as it started to implode, they wanted to hold on to it. And for me, I looked at it and said, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. I've poured in 25 years, my whole life at that point into this thing, and I see the inherent flaws in the system. We treated it like a business. We didn't treat it like a gimmick or anything like that. It was a legitimate business, and very, like I said, we had a huge impact in people's lives, and I loved it, and the time that was wonderful there. But I also understood, it's like that Kenny Rogers song, right? You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And I was like, you got to know when to fold them, right? And so for me, I sat back from that as we were going through this. I just stepped out and I was just like, I need to spend some time. So how long did that take? Maybe a year or two of but it was a process, right? So I stepped out and then I started looking at other options. What did I want to do? Right. So I started working within the legal industry and started to explore different avenues. And as I was doing that, I was also extracting all of the lessons, going back and unpacking it in my brain. And then from there, asking questions like, why am I? Who am I? Why am I here? Three most important questions people ask themselves all the time. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I have to offer? Right? So I started asking those questions. I was asking myself, what game am I playing? I know you love sports, right? It's like, what game am I playing? What am I passionate about? I love to see people win. Okay, well, that's generic. Well, what aspect of that really jazzes me? And I kept digging into those questions. And as I did that, I started realizing, wow, I love to see people play to their strengths, to be their best, to show up as the best version of themselves. Great. Okay, so what role do I play in that game? Am I the head coach? Am I the coach? Am I the water girl? Am I the cheerleader? Am I on the field with them? What's the game, right? And then what role am I playing? And so then I looked at it and said, okay, as I identified and said, I want to help them to identify these strengths and be able to operate in those strengths. Okay, great. So how do I do that? And then I built a business that allowed me to do that. So I didn't look at the money first. I looked at the impact that I could make and the passion that I had. What was I passionate about? What do I have strengths in? What is my experience? I put that together into the sweet spot, which then connected to a need and want in the marketplace, right? And so then I created an economic engine around that, which was through workshops, training, which then evolved into coaching and, what I do today.
And so when you got that idea and creating an economic engine around it, what was your first go-to-market and how did you start getting customers? Because I think that's where a lot of people fail in business. They get this idea, they get a domain, URL, they create a landing page, they get all these assets, they work on all this busy work, but yet they don't understand that 90% of the time, 100% of the time, really at first, should be spent on getting customers, prospecting, marketing, selling to generate revenue. What was your first
Yes.
go-to, and then how did you evolve from that initial thing that you started with?
Yes, so very grassroots. It's going for the people that I knew. I reached out to people that I knew. I reached out to my warm market, and I let them know what I was doing. I first of all didn't just say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm so awesome," right? I looked at and said, "Okay, who is this person? What do they want? What do they need? What are they looking to create in their business? And how can I help them do that? Who do I know that wants to learn how to play to their strengths? Who do I know that wants to level up their business?" And so I matched what I had to offer with what they were looking for. And so it was very grassroots, going out into warm market. I had already done a ton of networking. Okay. So I had already built, I lived in Toronto at the time. I'm now in the US, but back then, I did a lot of networking. I'd done thousands of cold calls. I just went through my database and I started to reach out, dial for dollars in a sense, like I'm just reaching out grassroots. I started to do workshops. So my first to market was doing workshops, offering workshops for teams. And so I started going out and, doing those workshops. As I started doing those workshops and got in the game, okay, then what happened is I'm on the playing field. I'm in there talking to people. I'm working with people. People started asking me, "Could you coach me one-on-one?" And that's how I got into one-on-one coaching. Initially, I actually didn't want to do it. I was like, "No, I'm not a coach. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. I'm not going to sit there and, and so they're like, "No, that's what we want." So then I started to listen for what it is that they were looking for, find a need and fill it. I had been doing that for years. I did that in my own business, right? I remember when I started out, I was 16, 17 years old selling fax machines door to door. Now, the reason why I was selling fax machines, they were brand new, and I could sell them at 25. I could buy them at one price and sell them at another price, right? They were $2,500. And then I was like, well, my friends don't buy fax machines, so who can I sell these fax machines to where I could get this? Business is fundamentally about having a customer and having something to sell, right?
Yep.
So I went out and I went door to door in industrial areas, those industrial plazas, and I was like, okay, shortest distance from point A to point B to get to a business owner that I can talk to is in these small businesses. So I just went over and over and over again, did that, and then gradually changed product lines. I've sold everything under the sun, went online, on the phone to make calls, was more efficient. Then I discovered networking events. It's always been very grassroots for me. And then I started getting referrals. And then, so as I was talking to people and I'm listening to what they want, and most of my database actually started off with people who said no to me. Here, look, I'm 17 years old, right? 20 years old. And they're like, "That's really cute," right? So, but I was like, "Hey, you know what? I understand you're not interested, but I really enjoyed having a conversation with you. Would it be all right if I stayed in touch?" And they go, "Yeah, sure." Right? So the president of CBS in Canada, all these different people that I just talked to anybody, right? And I just built these relationships. Every once in a while I'd touch base. So then when I was doing this, I had people to reach out to, right? And to say, "Hey, remember when you were, okay, you were talking about da-da-da-da, and you said you were looking for this, da-da-da. Hey, let's, I've got something that I think you might be interested in." I think right now, especially with social media, and I know you have a huge following on social media and leverage that highly, right? But you also have a network that you're working, right? A lot of people, they start a business, they have an idea, they go and they put their website up and they put their social media, their Instagram and so forth, and they're like, ta-da, and then they wait for the people to come. It doesn't work that way.
Yep.
I mean, having a podcast, I started my podcast in 2015. The people that I've met, I've gone out, I've talked to people, I'm having real conversations with real people, and those people connect me to these people, that connect me to these people, and then sure, they go and they check out my social media and they tell other people about it, and all that's great. But it really, for me, it's grassroots. It's reaching out, it's finding a need. It's serving the marketplace. I believe that sales is about creating so much value in the marketplace that the marketplace wants to pay you back for it. Now, obviously, you got to have a vehicle to make that possible, but it's creating so much value that the marketplace wants to pay you back for it. So you're serving first.
Yeah, I love that. Well, look, so as we wind this down, let's get into, you mentioned a podcast. I want to, first of all, I said it in the beginning of the show, but tell us about the podcast, and then, the name of it, where can people find it? And then I want to ask you the question about relationships.
Sure. So, Leaders of Transformation. I started it in 2015. It was actually a divine download, where I literally woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm in the middle of the relationship issue that we're going to talk about. And I'm like, God, what do I do? What do I do? I'm just like, emotionally, mentally, I'm just tapped. What do I do? And it was just like, I felt like I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. He said, you're going to do a podcast. It's going to be called The Leaders of Transformation. You're going to interview difference makers or world changers. Go. And I was like, podcast? What the heck's a podcast? I'd been on some, but I didn't understand all the dynamics of it. And I was like, when am I going to do this? And it was like, now. I said, like, now, or like build a strategy and now. So I took it literally. I got up out of bed, called somebody who was 4 hours ahead on Atlantic time, who was awake. And I said, hey, what do I need to know about this podcast thing? And we talked for about 10, 15 minutes. I'd been on his show, so I knew he knew something about it. And we were live 3 weeks later. And so that started the podcast. We just released episode 467. We've had guests from all over the world. It's just amazing. I have this like backlog of guest requests and booking agents, over 100 booking agents that send me guests. It's amazing. We've had such a great time, and it was a blessing. It was truly a blessing, because talk about environment and the people you're around. I got to level up. I went specifically into my network to start off with and said, hey, you're creating transformation. Would you like to come on my show and talk about it? And from there, they started introducing me to other people, and here we are today.
Yep. And on that show, what do you do, once a week?
It's once a week. Yeah, I actually, over the summertime, this last summer last year, I went to 2 a month. But I started off with 3 a week, went to 2 a week, 1, back to 2, went back to 1, and 1 is a really good frequency.
Yeah, I like that. Well, so then let's get into the relationship as we wind down here. Tell us about what happened and what you learned from it and where you are now.
So
by the way, before you get into this, people need to understand,
Yes.
like, if your home life is not on track and alignment, your business is going to suffer. Your business is
100%.
suffering. It's going to affect your home life. Like, things have to be in alignment, and it's important. You can use some of the same principles in business that you do in a relationship, and vice versa. So that's why I'm asking this question. It's so important, Nicole.
Yeah, 100%. So I married the love of my life when I was 38 years old. It was the first. So we met actually at a business event, and I was in the process of buying a franchise, and he was going to be managing that franchise. So it was kind of that initial orientation, 7-day intensive program with Blair Singer, and so I met him there. Anyway, we talked on and off for 3 years. We got married at 38. I came down here. Actually, I'm speaking of being tenacious. I was like, yeah, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. If we're not, we're not. I don't care. Like, I'm just not doing the whole thing, the long-term thing. And so we got married 9 days later after I came down to visit, and I went to Vegas, and it was awesome. It was awesome until it wasn't. And all of a sudden, here I am. He came back to Canada with me. I'm like going 100 miles an hour, and he's trying to figure out like what the heck, right? so we were on different paces and everything. And anyway, over the next few years, it was a rough ride. And so he said, I changed my mind. I moved down here. We went to Canada, but then we came back here, and he was just like, yeah, I don't want to be married anymore. And so we went through that process, and he ended up moving out. So I started my podcast in 2015. He moved out in 2014, and so I loved him. I absolutely believed in him, but I also saw that he was self-sabotaging himself and trying to get out of it. So at first, and I'll keep this short because it's a long story. I could write a book on it. And I am writing a book, anyways. But so the first thing I did was I took it personally. What was it about me? I'm not enough, right? It was like, oh crap. That fear that you have, like maybe I'm not enough or whatever so we learned as a kid, that all came up. So I had to deal with that. When I got through that and I got to the point of full self-acceptance, then I could really divert my attention to understanding what was going on with him and how could I support him. But even though all of that, he still left, he still moved out. And then I finally, in 2017, I said, look, I said, if this is it, and then let's just get a divorce. I didn't get married to get divorced. I got married for life, but I also need to respect that these are his decisions. So, long story short, he decided to. Went to the courthouse and everything, and then he said, "You know what? I think I might want to reevaluate it." And actually came through him saying, "I hope one day that you'll forgive me." And I said, "Man, I've already forgiven you. Like, I actually thank you. I thank you because this has been the greatest growth opportunity of my life." Mm-hmm. You didn't realize that that's what it was going to be, and you didn't mean for it to be that. But man, I thank you. And he was like, what? Anyway, long story short, we got back together a year later. We ended up getting divorced. That was the whole thing. It was just around the time my mom died. So my dad died 2016. My mom died 2018. And everything fell apart. And I was just like, what the heck? And but I said to him, I said, you know what? I love you. And I love me too. So, I respect your decisions. And you talk about the business through that whole season, and that's why the podcast came in, was because my business, which I was on the leading edge of the industry in terms of coaching, having started in 2005 and all that, I found myself that 5-year window when everything was really growing. I was dealing with like crazy town. And so I all of a sudden found myself behind the 8 ball, kind of going, shoot, how did I get here?
Right.
Everybody's building courses and doing all this stuff, and I'm so emotionally sapped. There is a lesson. There's a silver lining in this, and I will say this is that it's worked out for us, and I'll tell you the end of the story. But it's really important who you marry, who you're in relationship with, to your point. It's really important because it can cost you dearly in so many ways. And not just in money and all that, but it's like cost you dearly, and the impact that you can make and all of that. So anyway, long story short, 3 years later, so we got divorced, and I was like, okay, I get it, and let's move on. And he actually reached out to me and said, hey, I'm moving back to San Diego. And I was like, good for you. Enjoy that. And long story short, he actually came back, and but this time was different. This time he was actually changing behaviors. He was actually doing a lot of things, which I'm going into all detail. And so we actually end up getting remarried last year.
Wow.
And it has been amazing. And it is like, I feel like I married the person that I knew, but he's a new guy. Like, he's a completely different person.
Right.
And it's been such a blessing. So
That's
there's
awesome.
there's a lot in there for me
I'm
to,
sure there's a lot of details. Yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, I thought it was like I was going on a roller coaster with you, like ending back again.
Yeah, I said to him, I said 3 times the charms, or 3 strikes you're out. I don't know which this is. I don't know if I'm completely a masochist or what, but I will say this, because some people, and they probably still do, think that I'm nuts by doing that. Like, why did I let him back in the third? This 3 times. Is that I really, all of that journey of me really getting to know myself and knowing that I wasn't making that decision out of need. I was making that decision out of a place of peace and of whole, and I'm like fully whole and complete. And I said to him, I said, I'm happy with or without you. I'm good.
Yeah.
I am good. And so then it was a question of, from a place of true abundance, of saying, is this the right decision? Is this what we're called to? Is there something here? Sometimes we talk about soulmates, and I know he had this misconception of, well, it's supposed to be easy and flow. And I'm like, well, yeah. So sometimes in my experience, in our experience, is that soulmates, if you believe in that, soulmates will bring out the worst in you first, so that you can deal with your crap, so that the best of you can show up.
That's a good perspective. Yeah.
And that's what we've seen in our life.
That's a good perspective. Wow.
But you got to be willing to go there. You got to both be willing to go there. Because I said to him when he came back, I'm like, dude, this is who I am. This is what I'm committed to. I'm not saying you need to change. I'm just saying this is what I'm looking for. We're divorced now. You know, like I'm not trying to so if we're starting new, then this is I don't want to put you in a position where you're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
I don't want to make you to be anything that you're not. This is who I am. And you take it or leave it.
And so going through all this, it's developed you into a position where you can help people that have been in where you've been before. You're best to serve people that have been, that are where you've been before, in other words. So that's great because you can help people through that part too, because that is a big part of business. Nicole, what's the best place for people to find you?
The best place is leadersoftransformation.com. That's my website. Everything is there. And they can reach out to me there. So
awesome. Well, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your transparency and vulnerability. And I think, to me, I'm a guy that's just like an open book, and I think that allows me to be able to help a lot of people so that they can see that, it's just like this show. Like, you can see what I've gone through, see what my guests have gone through, so you know that you're not alone in what you're going through. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all for being here, watching, if you're watching on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, listening. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe and keep coming back. We're going to continue to bring you great guests here on the What Are You Made Of show in That One studio. Until next time, it's your boy C-Roc. Be that one. C-Roc in the building. Thrust is a must.